Today, we're ranking the 7 levels of hot female movie villains, from forgettable bad girls all the way to the ones who rewired pop culture and turned villainy into something you desire. Let's break it down. Level 1, Hot, Miss Perkins. Miss Perkins in John Wick is the perfect example of a disposable female villain at the hot level. She shows up at the Continental Hotel and is immediately introduced as a fellow assassin who knows the rules. She's beautiful, clearly capable, and then goes ahead to break those rules by trying to unalive Wick in his room. The fight that follows is brutal and well choreographed, but there's a hint of an agenda the film tries to push, and we'll get to exactly what that is. The entire sequence exists to establish two things. First, that the Continental's rules matter because breaking them has consequences. Second, that John Wick can beat the hell out of a trained female assassin even when caught off guard. That's it. Those are Ms. Perkins' only narrative functions, as she is nothing but a plot device wearing a leather jacket. The film gives her maybe 6 lines of dialogue total. We learn nothing about why she's an assassin, nothing about her history with the criminal underworld, and absolutely nothing about why she'd risk execution by breaking Continental rules. She's just there to create a problem that Wick solved, and once that problem is solved, she's executed off-screen by the hotel management. Miss Perkins isn't the only stunning villain on this hot level. Let's talk about Lady Deathstrike. In the comics, Lady Deathstrike is a complex character with a tragic backstory. She's the daughter of the man who bonded adamantium to Wolverine's skeleton. She blames Logan for her father's death and then volunteers for the same procedure out of revenge. There's psychology, there's motivation, and there's an actual person underneath the claws. But the X-Men franchise throws all of that away. In X-Men 2, Lady Deathstrike is a brainwashed servant of William Stryker. She has adamantium claws like Wolverine, but she's been mind-controlled into following orders, and that's her entire character. She doesn't speak, she doesn't make choices, and she doesn't even react to Wolverine beyond attacking him like some twisted robot. What makes this particularly frustrating is that Kelly Hu, who played the role of Lady Deathstrike in the movie, is a trained actress. She started as Miss Teen USA, and personally, I am of the opinion that Kelly Hu can handle action and drama, but the film gives her none. Not one line of dialogue, not one moment of choice, not even a facial expression that suggests there's a person underneath the mind control. What's frustrating is the pattern. These characters are written for drop-dead gorgeous actresses and then stripped of everything that would make them memorable. They are giving a leather jacket or a catsuit, maybe even a weapon that looks cool, but then sent into a fight scene where the hero proves their skill by beating them to a pulp. The worst part? The camera knows exactly what it's doing. It lingers on these characters just long enough for you to register that they're attractive, then moves on. But what happens when a smoking hot female villain gets dialogue and a backstory, even if it's thin? That's when things get slightly more interesting as we introduce our next level of hot villains. Level 2, Smoking, Catherine Tramell. In Basic Instinct, her interrogation scene is iconic. The seductive white dress, the leg cross positions, the cigarette, and the aura. It's burned into film history. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Strip away the iconography, what's actually there? Catherine Tramell is a crime novelist who may or may not be killing people in ways that mirror her books. She's wealthy, she's sexually fluid, she's intelligent enough to manipulate a police detective, and that's essentially the entire character. Everything else is performance, aesthetics, and the audience projecting complexity that the script never actually provides. The interrogation scene is instructive. It's brilliant filmmaking, as Paul Verhoeven knew exactly what he was doing. The camera angles, the lighting, and the way Sharon Stone, who played Catherine Tramell in the film, controls the room full of men through pure confidence and calculated provocation. She's playing the seductive game and winning. But notice what we don't learn. We don't learn her actual motivations. We don't learn why she writes murder mysteries, and we actually don't learn what drives her beyond enjoying power over others. Sharon Stone is incredible in the role. She's confident, controlled, and completely committed to the bit. Every line reading is mad genius, and every gesture is calculated. She commands the screen in a way few actresses could, but commanding the screen isn't the same as inhabiting a complex character. Next, Elektra King. In the 1999 James Bond franchise film, The World Is Not Enough, Elektra is supposed to be a complex character as the film tries to give her daddy issues and trauma. But it all comes back to seduction as she manipulates Bond through attraction, since that's her primary tool. She's the Bond girl who becomes the Bond villain, and the film thinks that switch alone makes her complex. It doesn't. But what's worse is how close the film comes to actually doing something interesting before chickening out completely. Her backstory is actually interesting on paper. Electra King is the daughter of an oil tycoon. She was kidnapped by the terrorist Renard, held for ransom, but her father refused to pay on MI6's advice. So she was held captive, abused, and eventually escaped. She develops Stockholm Syndrome, falls in love with her captor, and then plots revenge against her father and everyone who abandoned her. That's genuinely dark material for a Bond film. Honestly, I think this could have been the most psychologically complex Bond villain ever, but we'll get to why it completely falls apart in a minute. Watch how the film actually handles this. Elektra's trauma is mentioned repeatedly but never explored. We're told she was tortured, we're told she suffered, but the film shows none of that psychological damage in any meaningful way. Instead, she flirts with Bond. She manipulates him through attraction and then plays the victim to gain his protection. Every interaction is still fundamentally about seduction, and I honestly feel this is just lazy writing disguised as sophistication. In my opinion, these characters are all capable of so much more, but the scripts trap them in this one-dimensional archetype. Seduce the hero, create sexual tension, and betray him when convenient. That's the entire character arc. There's no room for growth because growth would complicate the formula, and even the rare attempts to add depth fall flat. But what happens once a villain gains actual power beyond sexual manipulation? Let's find out at our next level. Level 3, Scorching, Zinnia Onatopp. Yes, her name is absurd, but the character works in James Bond's Golden Eye because she combines sexuality with genuine lethality. Onatopp literally kills people with her thighs. It's ridiculous, memorable, and somehow effective. She's not just distracting Bond, she's actively trying to murder the guy. Personally, I believe the threat is real and the fights are physical. Zinnia is competent enough that Bond has to strategize instead of just resisting temptation, and to me, that's an upgrade. In the film, Zinnia is a Georgian ex-Soviet fighter pilot turned assassin for the Janus crime syndicate. She has actual skills. She flies helicopters and is trained in hand-to-hand combat. She uses her sexuality as one weapon among many, not as her only weapon. That's the crucial difference from level 2 villains who just seduces. When Zinnia seduces someone, it's foreplay before she kills them, as the seduction serves the violence, not the other way around. But what makes her truly dangerous is something most viewers miss on first watch, and we'll get to that. The introduction says everything. Zinnia walks into a casino in Monte Carlo, looking like a snack. She plays baccarat against a stranger, flirts with him, takes him to his yacht, and then sends him to his maker with her thighs during humping. It's ridiculous at first. It's over the top, but it's also brilliant. The film establishes immediately that this hottie is a killer who happens to be attractive, not an attractive woman playing at being dangerous, and I think that's outstanding filmmaking. The film never asks you to believe she's dangerous, it shows you repeatedly. But hold your horses, because the next femme fatale on this level will blow your mind: Poison Ivy. The 1997 Batman and Robin isn't all that. And yes, the dialogue is trash. The bat nipples are a crime against costume design, but Poison Ivy herself? She's actually a legitimate threat with real powers that have nothing to do with looking attractive. And that matters more than people give it credit for. Because buried underneath all that camp is something that reveals a crucial truth about female villains. But we'll get to that. Poison Ivy is Dr. Pamela Isley, a botanist who gets transformed by plant toxins and becomes an eco-terrorist with actual superpowers. She controls plants, she creates toxins, she's immune to all poisons, and her French kiss is literally lethal. These aren't seduction techniques, these are biological weapons. She can kill you with a kiss, yes, but she can also strangle you with vines or poison you with pheromones. Sexuality is one tool in an arsenal of genuine abilities, and honestly, that's what separates her from pure seductresses. Her transformation scene establishes her competence immediately. She's working in a lab in South America, and her boss, Dr. Jason Woodrue, is experimenting on people. She discovers his crimes, so he pushes her into a cabinet full of toxins and exotic plants, expecting her to die. But instead, the chemicals and plant DNA transform her, and she emerges as Poison Ivy with complete control over plant life. It's campy as hell, but it's also showing you that her powers are scientific, not magical. What makes Poison Ivy level 3 is demonstrated capability beyond seduction. When seduction fails or isn't convenient, she has backup plans involving actual violence, and I think that's crucial. Level 2 villains collapse when seduction doesn't work, but level 3 villains have alternatives. The female villains on this level are effective, but they're still not deep. They're dangerous, but they're not complex, and that's what holds them back from the higher levels. I strongly believe competence is good, but what happens when you add psychological complexity to physical danger, and that takes us to the next level. Level 4, Blazing, Annie Wilkes. In the 1990 movie Misery, Annie Wilkes is not conventionally attractive, she's not sexualized, but she's one of the most terrifying female villains I have ever seen. Why? Because she feels intensely real. Too real, if I must say. Her obsession with the novelist she's holding captive isn't just theatrical, it's diabolical. Her mood swings aren't for show, they are genuinely unpredictable, as you never know when she'll snap. What makes Annie Wilkes work is psychology, as she's not evil for evil's sake. She's mentally unstable, she's delusional, and she believes she's helping, and that's what makes her dangerous. Not physical power, not seduction, just the complete disconnect between her perception and reality. And Kathy Bates, who played the role, did it with such conviction that the character becomes unforgettable. Amy Dunn. In Gone Girl, Amy Dunn shows another modern masterclass in psychological complexity. She's calculating, brilliant, and absolutely terrifying, but the film also shows why she became this way. Years of being molded into the perfect wife and years of having her identity erased. Her revenge is diabolical, but it's not random, as it's a methodical response to systematic erasure. Rosamund Pike plays her with such control that you're never sure whether to be horrified or impressed. What separates this level from the previous ones is emotional depth. These villains aren't just threats, they're people. Damaged, dangerous people, but people nonetheless. You understand their pain even when you oppose their actions, and that's what makes them linger. They're not forgettable because they're not simple. Quick pause. If you're enjoying this breakdown, hit subscribe, as we do deep dives like this all the time. Back to it. Psychological complexity is powerful, but there's something even more dangerous. What happens when a villain becomes so charismatic that audiences actively root for them? Let's find out at our next level. Level 5, Inferno. Villanelle. Villanelle in Killing Eve is a psychopath who murders people for money, and yet she's the most compelling character on screen. Why does Villanelle work? Because she's fun. She's funny, stylish, and she unalives people with creativity and flair. The show never pretends she's a good person, but it makes her entertaining, and that entertainment creates affection. You know she's dangerous, you know she's wrong, but you're so dang invested in her survival because she's more interesting than everyone else. Another gorgeous villain on this level is none other than Maleficent. Disney took a classic villain and completely rewrote the rules. This isn't just a competent threat, this is a villain so charismatic that the entire film pivots to make her the protagonist. The movie literally erases the hero and replaces her with the person who was supposed to be evil, and it works. But what makes this work isn't just Angelina Jolie's star power. There's something deeper happening here that changed how studios think about female villains. The original Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty is pure evil. She curses a baby because she wasn't invited to a party. She's petty, cruel, and one-dimensional, as the 1959 animated film doesn't try to explain her. She's just a villain. But the 2014 film does something radical. It gives her a backstory. It shows her as a young fairy protecting the moors, a magical forest kingdom. She's innocent, she's powerful, she's so trusting, and then a human man named Stefan betrays her in the worst possible way. He drugs her and cuts off her wings to present them to the dying king. So Maleficent curses Stefan's daughter because Stefan took her ability to fly, her freedom, and her bodily autonomy. She's lashing out at what he loves most because he destroyed what she loved most. That's revenge, not random villainy. The film makes you understand her rage. You might not agree with cursing a baby, but you understand why she's capable of it, and personally, I think that's brilliant character work. The villain becomes a victim who does villainous things, and that's level 5 complexity. Next on this level is Hela. In Thor Ragnarok, Hela is the goddess of death. She kills Thor's friends, she conquers Asgard, and she's objectively terrible, but she's so stylish, so powerful, so commanding that you can't look away. Cate Blanchett plays her with theatrical relish as every line is delivered with perfect confidence, and she dominates every scene she's in. You're not rooting for her exactly, but you're certainly enjoying watching the Empress work. What makes this level work is the screen presence that overpowers the heroes. These vixens don't just share scenes, they share a bond. They dominate them. Their dialogue is quotable, their fashion becomes aspirational, and their actions, however terrible, are framed as bold instead of monstrous. And that framing matters, as it's the difference between a villain you fear and a villain you admire. This level changed the industry as villains stopped being obstacles and became franchises. That's power. Charisma can carry a villain far, but there's one level higher where beauty becomes a weapon, danger becomes art, and the villain transcends the film itself. And that's level 6, Volcano. Selina Kyle, Catwoman. In Batman Returns, Catwoman's performance defined the modern sexy villain aesthetic. The costume alone became iconic. Black latex, stitched together with white thread. It's been the most popular Halloween costume for decades, but it's not just a look. It's how Michelle Pfeiffer played the character. Selina Kyle in the film isn't just a villain. She's a woman who died, came back wrong, and decided to own it. There's pain underneath the confidence, vulnerability under the sexy leather. Catwoman doesn't seduce Batman to manipulate him. She's genuinely attracted and conflicted. She wants revenge, but also connection. And that complexity, combined with that costume and that performance, created something that transcended the film. Next, Mystique. Blue skin, yellow eyes, scales. Jennifer Lawrence took that character and added star power, emotional depth, and franchise centrality, transforming Mystique from a memorable villain into a cultural touchstone. And here's what's fascinating about that evolution. It wasn't just about the performance, it was about timing, cultural shifts, and what audiences needed from their heroes. Lawrence's entry into the role in X-Men First Class from 2011 changed the character fundamentally. Suddenly, Mystique had a voice and a backstory. She had emotional struggles about identity and belonging. The film made her Charles Xavier's adopted sister and Magneto's eventual ally. It gave her a journey from an insecure teenager hiding her blue skin to a confident woman embracing her true form. That narrative arc is what elevated the character from a visual icon to an emotional anchor. Personally, I think this transformation is everything the blue-skinned character needed. It deepened the character while also maybe over-explaining what worked better as a mystery. The character goes from supporting player to franchise centerpiece across 4 films. And that trajectory matters because it shows how cultural phenomena are built, not born. What makes this level different is influence. These villains didn't just entertain, they changed the blueprint. Fashion magazines referenced them. Other films copied them, and cosplay communities built entire cultures around them. They became larger than the movies they came from, but even cultural phenomena pale in comparison to the highest level. Because there's one type of villain who doesn't just break the rules, she makes you forget there were rules at all, and that brings us to the peak level. Level 7, the Supernova, Nurse Ratched. Nurse Ratched in the 1975 comedy drama One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is the perfect example of this level. You ask why? Let me tell you. Ratched isn't sexy, she's cold, clinical, and controlled. She doesn't raise her voice as she doesn't need to. Her power comes from institutional authority and psychological domination. She breaks people by staying calm, and that's terrifying in a way no physical villain can match. Louise Fletcher, who played the role, won the Oscar for this performance because she disappeared into pure menace, making the character Nurse Ratched a household name. Miranda Priestly. The villain in Devil Wears Prada is one you respect more than you fear. She's not evil, she's exacting. Her standards are impossibly high, and her intelligence is weapon grade. Every line is a masterclass in controlled menace, and yet, she's not wrong as she's built an empire through taste and discipline. The film frames her as an antagonist, but she's also aspirational. Miranda Priestly redefined what a female boss villain could be. Before this, powerful women in film were either seductresses or harpies, but Priestly showed that power could be elegant, justified, and earned. The character influenced how an entire generation understands professional ambition. She's quotable, she's memed, she's studied in business schools, and that's influence beyond cinema. Then there is Harley Quinn, this hot vixen transformed from Joker's sidekick to a cultural icon. The character was already popular in comics and animation, but Margot Robbie, who played the role, made her a phenomenon with her wild energy. What separates Harley Quinn from other chaotic villains is the performance. She's not just random, she's damaged trying to reclaim agency through chaos. Robbie plays her as someone who found freedom in madness. But to understand just how perfectly Robbie embodied something audiences didn't know they were desperate for, let me give you a little history class. Harley Quinn was created for Batman in the animated series in 1992. She was supposed to be a one-off character, a henchwoman for the Joker, but she became so popular that she was integrated into comics, video games, and animated films. The costume design became instantly iconic. Hot pants, torn shirt, fishnet stockings, and baseball bat with property of Joker written on it. It's provocative without being exploitative because Robbie plays Harley as someone who chooses her own aesthetic. The sexuality is hers, not for the audience. She dresses this way because Harley Quinn dresses this way, and that ownership matters. Harley Quinn became one of the most popular costumes in the world, not just for comic book fans, but for everyone. Teenage girls, adult women, all want to dress as Harley for Halloween. The pink and blue hair, the pigtails, the bat. That's cultural penetration that goes beyond the film itself. When people who don't consume your medium start emulating your character, you've achieved something rare. What makes this level untouchable is that actors disappear into these roles. You don't see the performance, you see the person, as these films are remembered primarily for their villains. The protagonists fade, but the villains endure. That's career-defining work, and that's cultural impact lasting decades. This level proves something crucial. The best female villains aren't just hot. They're complicated, powerful, and written as human beings first. Eye candy never. Attractiveness amplifies a villain, but substance makes them immortal. Which level do you think has the most iconic villain? Did we miss someone who belongs at level 7? Drop your picks in the comments, and if you want more breakdowns that rank, analyze, and expose the patterns in Hollywood, subscribe. We've got plenty more coming.